Hello and welcome to another episode of the Truth About Real Estate Investing show. Happy belated Father's Day to all the great fathers out there, and to the mothers pulling double duty, I don't know how you do it. A quick word on children and making the world a better place. Here's a quote from Saifedean Ammous's book, The Bitcoin Standard. A society in which individuals bequeath their children more than what they received from their parents is a civilized society. It is a place where life is improving and people live with the purpose of making the next generation's lives better. End quote. Again, Saifedean Ammous. That's pretty cool, eh? I thought so. That's what's great about you, the listeners. You're here investing in yourselves to get educated, get inspired to invest in real estate, stock hacking, whole life insurance, new businesses, to get ahead in life and provide better futures for yourselves and for your families. For many of the rich, the more you make, the more you give. Warren Buffett, for example, just announced he is donating $4.1 billion worth of Berkshire Hathaway shares to charity. And note that he'd rather donate that money than let it go to the government via tax, because in my experience, a well-operated charity with low overhead costs is infinitely more effective than government. But first things first, you have to be rich with assets to have the option to choose where your money goes. For TAREI and I, our plan is to leave 8 figures to the Hamilton Bash Brigade, the charity that we operate with next to no overhead costs, as almost everything is donated and no one is on payroll, let alone pension. The 8 figures of capital will form a charitable foundation, meaning the capital is not spent, but rather it's invested, and the proceeds from investing via stock hacking will provide the operating budget for the charity. The Hamilton Bash Brigade will then spend the budget. They'll spend that money on clothing, shoes, backpacks, food, whatever the children of Hamilton need. That will be our contribution to the next generation, into the future and future generations. This foundation will last forever. We will be teaching our kids to be grateful for all they have and all the importance of giving to the less fortunate. However, hopefully they will go on to grow the charity and continue to improve society for future generations. That is our mission, and if it's not them, it will be someone else, because it must be done. We can't rely on the government or even other charities, honestly. The weed charity scandal should be enough to make anyone skeptical of how any charity operates. And that is kind of the reason why we decided to go our own path in starting our own. As the reopening of Canada and Ontario continues, we plan to be running events in person once again, once we're legally able to. TAREI and I we've gotten both of our shots. As I record this, I'm fully vaccinated and very grateful. Not gonna lie, I cried a bit after my second shot. It's such a relief knowing that my personal pandemic is over. I'm not at risk to our clients, our staff, my family, etc. I have the same vaccines in me as the Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, AstraZeneca, and Moderna. So if it's good enough for the leader of the 4th largest economy in the world, or the largest economy in the European Union, it's good enough for me. I took the first shots available to me at the shortest interval possible, so exactly at 8 weeks. So I'm not at risk of being hospitalized by any of these variants, because I know that our country's borders are a sieve, and I personally would like to avoid any chance of hospitalization. My friend's mom was even on a plane coming back from Mexico, on a plane full of folks connecting from their country of origin, which is banned to have direct flights with Canada, because that country is known to have one of the worst variants and one of the ones that crush their medical system. Thankfully, all the adults in my family have double shots, and I can't wait to host my niece for a sleepover party this weekend. The kids are all beyond excited, and it will be fun to entertain family at what I call a cottage experience, which is our home, which is only 40 minutes from the city. Life is getting back to normal, and I can't wait to enjoy a normal summer. I hope the same for all of you out there as well, a safe and enjoyable summer. On to this week's show. It's a fun one. Fresh off the golf course from a golf lesson, we had the mothers of real estate. For those watching on YouTube, our Truth About Real Estate Investing channel, please pardon our attire, as these moms and I they're busy having 10 kids and running real estate empires. But yeah, we got it done. We came directly from the golf course to record this episode, so we're dressed casually, and I still have my hat head. I don't know why I still have that today. Gillian Irving, she shouldn't need any introduction. She's now on the show for the 3rd time. She's a successful student rental investor, cryptocurrency investor, small business owner, and mom to 4 kids. Monika Jazik, she prefers buy and hold, a lot of stuff north and also in Toronto. She prefers now to be passively investing in storage spaces, industrial warehousing, and she's very busy with 4 kids at home. Rachel Oliver, who's been on the show before, we mastermind together, so I know Rachel very well. With her, she works with her husband Neil Oliver, and they own the largest rent-to-own business in Canada with a 90% successful buyout rate by the tenants. So it's truly a win-win-win business model for her partners, and the tenant. We discuss if now is the right time to be buying real estate, what their parents taught them about money, if there are any barriers for mothers or women to get into starting investing, what these ladies are teaching their kids about investing, about life. So please enjoy the show. It was a blast to record. So to follow the Mothers of Real Estate, acronym M.O.R.E, the website is mothersofrealestate.com. Please enjoy the show.
Oh, trust me.
So hang on, you guys had a TV show. What was that like?
So we're all just wrong.
You guys are used to just.
It was pressure. We had ear things, and we had.
Are we on?
Oh yeah, we're started.
We had like, do you remember? We would take turns. I was, of course, voluntold that I have to be the first one to wear this earpiece, so the sound booth and producer is like talking to me in my ear.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. This is our very first episode. It's the first time I'm hearing somebody like talking to me, and I'm trying to pay attention to what each of you are saying and participate in the conversation. And I'm talking, and all of a sudden, Rachel, tell Gillian not to lie down on the table. And Gillian is like, oh, yes, guys, I'm so happy to be doing the show with you. And yes, Wanda, you tell us about, Rachel, you tell. And the producer, please motion to Gillian to sit up. And I'm like, how do I keep
How do you
this
motion that?
How do you motion
What's the motion?
that?
What did you do?
I kind of looked at her, and I just kind of did things. She didn't like my eyes. She didn't get the message. It was a really bad game of charades.
With your eyes. Charades with your eyes.
And
Okay.
then we had to go to break, and then just like, Gillian, you can't do that. Sure enough, right after break, what do you think? Gillian gets all relaxed after break, and she starts lying on the table again. And the whole episode, all the producer kept telling me, tell Gillian not to lie down.
Well, I wasn't actually lying down.
Were you
but
tired?
No, if you replay that episode, in fact, we should probably pull out a screen grab of exactly
It
what
was
the producer
more
was
like
saying.
trying to lean in, I would say, like to be a part of the conversation.
Show interest in
But
the conversation.
I was trying to weigh, not trying to be like super uptight and trying to be comfortable at ease. Like it was a conversation. Like the whole theme of the TV show was that it was meant to feel like you were sitting around a coffee table with us, listening to our conversations with each other. So in my head, I was thinking, we don't need to be so formal and uptight. Like be cash. And apparently, I was a little bit too casual for. Anyway, it was good learning for all of us. This TV show, none of us had ever done anything like it before. So I think I was the how not to sit person. Like how not to sit on TV was the lesson I brought to the group. Yeah, I was a bit loungy.
But we learned so much with that. Was we learned how to do run sheets, and we learned all about reading off the teleprompter and how to ad-lib when the teleprompter was wrong.
How to
and
cut
you're on
people
live
off.
television.
And how to cut, so if someone gets long-winded like me, wah, 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 whoever was in charge, and we had to go to commercial break, you're seeing, and you can't look at the camera, and you can't really look at the countdown directly, but it's counting down. You have 10 seconds to wrap up a very intense conversation with your colleagues and a guest that we had at the table who have no concept of the fact that there's a countdown, and you have to shut them down and turn to a camera, read a teleprompter, we'll be back right after the break. And you're like, I remember doing that a lot.
Yeah, it was really tense, actually.
It was.
And what was the show called?
Mothers of Real
Mothers
Estate.
of Real Estate.
We're very creative.
And then what did you guys talk about on the show?
Real estate. And us being mothers. And then we had guests on there, and we'd feature them and talk to them about different things. Like, what did we talk? What were our topics? We had flips, house flips. We talked about our story. We talked about
Yes,
the
we talked
importance
about our
of
individual
education.
strategies. We talked about, we had Tahani came on. We had Dalia Barsoom talk to us about mortgages. We had a designer talk to us about deluxe cottage rentals that she was doing. And we had that guy who...
Was that Sean Cooper?
Sean Cooper, the one who...
Burn Your
Not
Mortgage.
Burn- is it Burn Your Mortgage?
Burn
Yeah.
Your Mortgage. The author of Burn Your Mortgage.
Yes.
He's a millennial who paid off his mortgage in like no time flat and wrote a book about it. And he had all of these really interesting ideas. And he was
super frugal, super frugal guy. But it was kind of like
it was interesting. It appeals to different viewers.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Different age groups. And then we had the lady that appeared on Dragon's Den with the gardening glove. Claudia. And she was investing in Detroit, so she talked about her strategy in
Canadian
Detroit.
investing in Detroit?
Yeah, okay. Canadian who was on Dragon's Den, who had kind of an entrepreneurial venture here in Canada that took off in North America, and she ultimately used the wealth from that to build her wealth in real estate, and that was a really interesting story. She's also a mom. Yeah. So, we tried to...
She was good. And another mom came on. Julie Broad came on. She was great.
But she was in our... So we had 2 TV shows. Like, we had one with Rogers.
And then we got picked up nationally.
And then we woke up from that nightmare.
we went all over the place. We were supposed to do another one, and then we did not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How do you start a TV show?
So this is a perfect example of kind of ask and you shall receive. I mean, Monika one day said, hey, you know what, maybe we could do a TV show. And Rachel and I were like, really, you think? And they said, well, let's just go to the offices and let's pitch the idea to someone. And all of us thought, well, that's crazy. None of us have any TV experience. And so we kind of went thinking, it's not possible. And sure enough, Rogers loved this idea of having 3 women real estate investors with different strategies, mothers, and they loved the idea. They're like, sure, go ahead. And we couldn't believe it. They gave us the studio. And we had to.
We created a set.
We had to design our own set, like get furniture and design.
That's gorgeous. You should have seen this set. This was all them. They were just brilliant. I just had the idea, and then we just showed up. And she showed up with. Okay, so this is the way we work. I get the ideas, then we start it, and then these 2 are so much more technical. And so Gillian did this amazing set. Rachel shows up at this ad-lib Rogers thing. I'm like, let's just talk to them with booklets. Here are the spreadsheets and booklets. Here we go. Like, let's present it to them. So maybe that landed it. I don't know. But it was a lot, but it was great.
We were prepared. We had a pitch. We put together a pitch, and they liked the ideas, and ultimately I think they liked our personalities. I think that's what really sells. You know, you can't do what you do if you didn't have a personality and if you didn't have knowledge.
I don't have a personality. I just invite people on.
We'll be your personality.
Perfect. Because I lack one of those, I hear. So there's so much to unpack there. Let's start with the easy one. You all have different strategies. So Gillian's been on the show many times. Rachel's been on the show before. So let's start with Monika.
Yeah, what's wrong? Why have I never been invited on the show before?
There was that pandemic thing that threw some. We tried so hard because the problem was we tried to get you all on at the same time, which was probably the mistake.
This is difficult.
If I just tried to pick you off individually, that would be much easier versus trying to coordinate 3 moms with like big businesses.
Yeah. Well, that's the story. I mean, that's like the story. And I think maybe that's why they like the story. And that's how we evolved, because we are 3 moms with big businesses. And how the heck do 3 moms with big businesses like combine and then create this story and say, let's like inspire other moms with big businesses. And so it's kind of funny how it really happened. I think the story is just so real that people can relate to it.
Right. Like my context is so different than the average person. Like, for example, I've known Gillian forever. And Rachel, I've known you from Rain forever. Sorry, Rachel, I've known you from Rain forever. Like I've known moms who are really successful real estate investors forever. Like, as long as I've been a real estate investor, I've always known lots of women and moms who are real estate investors. Is that not, I guess that's not so common outside of this room or the circles that we're in?
I think the circles we're in, it's just so common to know everyone in real estate. Because I think you get to a point as an investor where, you know, it's very rare that you're in conversation with people really who aren't looking to get into it or really who aren't into it. But the story before, we were moms together in real estate, and the circles we were in before we were investors. And you think back, you know, 10, 15 years ago, and the conversations you're having, the people you're interacting with, it was just so different. So different. And those people, a lot of those people are still in those circles. Like, believe it or not, there are water coolers with really horrible, tedious conversations that people gather around that work every single day, or they used to, at least, and they fill their head with you know, they want to be doing something different, but they're dragged down with these everyday boring conversations with gloom and doom or investing other ways. And so I think it's important that you have podcasts like this and shows like this, because it really spreads that message. And I think people really are reliant on the outside world and watching people who are actually doing something different than 96% of most
Probably
people.
more than that.
Probably.
Because keep in mind, like, a lot of investors have multiple properties, and it's like just over 1%, I think, of all mortgages are investors. So, and then again, like, you all have multiple mortgages, so yeah. But yeah, I want to touch on because your all your investment strategies are different. So, for anyone who's watching us on the video, about we have 12 listeners, 17 listeners, I think, and so we have about 4 YouTube watchers or so. So anyone's watching the show, it's actually much more interesting because when Rachel was trying to use her facial expressions to describe how to get Gillian from stop sleeping, so it's much more interesting on YouTube. But we just got off the golf course. We were getting a private lesson, and Monika, you were sharing with me how you still own property outright yourself, but your interest is more on passive investing these days.
My interest on these days is, as a wealth builder, is really diversifying and investing in what works. So I invest actively, I invest passively, and ideally I'd be doing both. So whatever works. I know we had some chit chat about crypto and Bitcoin, and I haven't done that yet, but I'm learning. And anything that works. I'm actually doing an angel investment into a tech company, so that's really exciting. It's one of our first angel investments. So, and also investing back into our business and our time and that. So I think we have a lot of these residual streams of income that are going, but I think we're all so immersed in the investment world that it's not a matter of what am I going to do. It's a matter of what makes sense at this time. And so our teams are forever analyzing deals every day. I'm looking at things that come across our desk, both active and passive, but really it's my ability to be able to create these deals and what makes sense. And I think that really is the level that people have to be at when they're investing. It's not just buying and selling homes. They have to know how to create great deals and which strategies to implement and when.
Because the one strategy that you were telling me about on the golf course was something that makes a lot of sense, industrial space.
Oh my God. I love industrial warehousing.
Because it makes a lot of sense in today's market.
Absolutely.
I actually wonder how many retail spaces will just turn into industrial warehouse.
They will. And there's this new thing, the new concept where people are actually hiring out, because a lot of these retailers who shut down from COVID, they don't need those commercial spaces anymore. People are really figuring out, how to utilize their space, but they have to put their stuff somewhere. So they actually have something like pallet sharing, where they're renting out warehouses by the square foot. So say if you're a small beauty company and you just need to store like 500 hair dryers or something, you can actually rent out by square foot on a particular section of a warehouse. It's like a warehouse Airbnb or something for other small business owners. I thought that was just
like a space
the
sharing,
coolest thing.
It's like co-working space. Now you have co-storage
Co-storage.
Yeah, co-storage.
But I imagine there's logistical benefits to that space, right? Is it kind of like people will do pick, pack, and do shipment from there? Is that?
Well, they would have to be able to do those sort of things there. And but I think that was the first space that we actually, we're definitely talking to investors about that, about this is going to be one of those sectors. Well, the commercial sector sort of went down. This sector would actually be booming. So I actually did do a lot of investments in that space, but it was through a private market fund. I didn't go out and buy some random industrial space in the middle of
because they're really
Timbuktu
cheap, right? You just need like $100,000 and you can get into one of these things, right?
Exactly. They're a little bit expensive, and when they're in prime areas, they're a whole lot expensive. And I think that's another thing people need to realize is you don't always need the whole pie. You can just have a piece of the pie as well. Like self-storage we were talking about as well. And these are great self-storage, like real self-storage, not container shippings in the middle of a field or something. And so that too is another way that people can get a little piece of the pie and have someone else do the investment, so then we could do more golf.
Right, exactly.
And I think we don't cover that enough on the show, I think, is that is that we don't discuss enough about passive investments, because I think we all have passive investments.
Well, that's a goal.
Well,
is
maybe
to
you
kind of
should
do-
have me back. We could have a whole hour on passive investments.
Yeah, again, it was a mistake trying to get you all three at the same time. Like today was already. We should do today. Today was fun. I
I know,
thought.
I'm sorry. I
was
think
so
I had to
fun.
text you like 50 times. I'm like, oh, okay. No, is it Tuesday?
Yeah,
Is it
this
Tuesday?
day,
Which Tuesday?
no, this hour, no. Oh, gee.
Well,
Some
were
Tuesday
you impressed
in the
though
summer.
with our golf? That's
Oh,
the most
absolutely.
important thing. See?
Yeah, you know, it's part of what we do is to always be out of our comfort zone. And that's the other thing is that
I love that, yeah.
we're always like, you've all spent significant time outside your comfort zone, right? And the people who avoid that, they're not going to get ahead.
It's sort of the addiction
Absolutely.
now is you recognizing the feeling when you're like just on the cusp of learning something new and you feel like kind of
Yeah.
awkward and stretched, and then you know you're doing something that's kind of worthwhile. Like I actually actively seek out that feeling now because it's always on the other side of feeling like a little uncomfortable,
Yeah.
or little challenge that all the
Yeah.
really great things come from, right?
Yeah, and you were sharing on the last time you were on the show, you were sharing how you're really stretching your thinking. Like you were, you know, you weren't doing so much stock, and then you're doing stock options,
Right.
and then you're getting to crypto,
Right.
like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then you're going into all the. How many cryptocurrencies are there?
How many are there, or
Yeah.
how many do I have?
No, I was making jokes with people like always bet black, and like I bet there's a crypto called black. Like yeah, let's Google it. Oh, there's a black. Always bet. It's the thing is always bet black, right?
Right.
And then there happens to be a red as well.
You better get disclaimers.
Folks,
Erwin told me
if you
to bet
can't-
black. Now it's all gone.
If you can't tell, folks, none of this is financial advice. So yeah, you've always stretched yourself, and the analogy I was giving today with golf was, like, I don't know how to play, and I think one of the greatest mistakes investors make is they try to figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
Or they're too afraid because they're going to suck for a while. Like, it's like, it would be so disappointing for you,
Right.
you know, to say I'm never going to play golf because you're lousy for kind of a long time until you're not. And then all of a sudden you're kind of less lousy, you know, but you have to kind of be prepared to put yourself out there and learn through all those stretching kind of.
And you
parts.
can't get intimidated. We were talking about all the mechanical movements that you have to take into account to actually set yourself up to actually even take the shot and keeping all that straight. And a lot of people, I think, get confused and overwhelmed by all the steps that it takes to be successful as a real estate investor. And they give up before they've fully mastered taking all those steps, and that's a real shame. I think that's where a lot of people are. You know, it's great that if you take the steps and you try and you persevere and you push yourself out of the comfort zone, even if you don't succeed, I still think it's a win.
Yeah, but you eventually get better. I mean, eventually it feels
Absolutely.
comfortable, right?
Well, how the conversation started was I was telling Chris, the club pro, that you're all coaches. So let's see if these coaches can be students.
We're so coachable because we all have coaches. So like the higher, you know, coaches have coaches. And those coaches have coaches. I mean, I'm sure Tony Robbins is a coach. I don't
Any
know.
idea who it is?
I don't know who that would be.
Jim Rohn was his first coach.
Maybe
Yeah,
God?
that's true.
I don't know.
Legend.
So that's an interesting point, because if we kind of take it all back and how Mothers of Real Estate even came to be, actually there's a coach that brought us together. We didn't even know it. We all shared a certain path with Julie Broad. So in some capacity, Julie Broad coached every single one of us at different times, at different intervals in our lives. But when we found out that common thread, that we all had that same foundational knowledge, we're like, okay, now it makes sense. And this is why we're able to do big business. This is why we're able to step out of our comfort zone and persevere and make it work, because we all had very similar foundational building blocks. And I can't stress how important that is.
Well, yeah, and in golf today, the first thing that the coach taught us was grip. And so if you don't have your grip, and if we were just to go, let's meet up at the driving range, we'd all be grabbing our sticks with our own different grips, which would probably be pretty wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's like the foundation. Without the grip, how are you ever going to progress to that next level? I overheard my tennis coach talk about my serve and my poor grip, and how I'm never going to get that speed and agility if I don't change that grip. And this really is like investing. And when we all had that common thread with Julie, the thing we really liked about Julie's coaching is she's all about the foundations. She's very real, and she teaches great lessons in an easy to understand manner, but teaches people things they really need to know. Nothing fancy out of the box, smokes and mirrors strategy. She's a really great teacher, and I think that was the common thread why us as students now we coach in that same manner. Things that actually work, and they all go back to the foundation and those proven step-by-step systems.
Yeah, and that's why we got a club pro who's a top 1% golfer. And so understand what top 1% golfer means. It's actually like we all golfed today,
Yeah,
but none
exactly.
of us submitted our scores to Canada Golf whatever. So he's top 1% among people who actually track their scores.
Okay.
Right?
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're saying there's somebody potentially better, but if they don't track their score, we'll never know?
No, more on like none of us track our scores, right? So he's top 1% of the people who actually take this seriously,
Got it. Got it.
right? There's like the example I always give is, a lot of places just drive me nuts because they just check boxes. For example, my car, I won't name what it is, but it has GPS, but it stinks, right? I end up using my Apple CarPlay, right? So yes, it does do GPS, but it stinks, right? And then people say, oh, I'm a real estate investor. Like, oh yeah, that's great, right? I also know how to play chess, right? I know how the pieces move. But an 8-year-old with practice will likely beat me. So am I really a chess player, right? So then when people say I'm a real estate investor, you still have to qualify it, right? Like we were talking about on the golf course, someone who buys a property a year, that's fantastic, but they won't hold a candle to like someone like Rachel who does what, 50 a year, 100 a year? Jeez, yeah, see? So even though you're both real estate investors, you still have to quantify it.
Absolutely.
Right. So yeah, 100 a year, what strategy?
Rent to own.
Never heard of it.
No, it's one of these strategies that most people don't, they underestimate. It's a great strategy for people who really want time freedom and lucrative returns in a very short amount of time. With real estate investing, I think it's important to have a portfolio that gives you something longer term, which is the buy, rent, hold stuff. And obviously that's where Gillian and Monika play. But I think there's also a place for people like me who, first of all, didn't want tenants and toilet headaches. I always say that. That was my number one driver for not wanting to pursue what you guys do. And then the other factor was that I wanted to exit my job, and I really needed cash flow in order to offset a job income. And not just my job income. I thought, okay, well, if I'm exiting my job, well, then my husband, Mr. No, who I've nicknamed since the beginning, I yanked him out of his full-time job, and cash flow was really pivotal in our ability to do that. So rent to own was the only strategy that gave us few headaches and really high returns, and it stuck. I mean, we started in 2009. And it's just blossomed into a beautiful experience, because not only are we now creating opportunities for ourselves and our family, the essence of the strategy is to help families who have been turned down by a bank, can't get a mortgage, and they need to rent to own.
Well, and to help investors who want to invest in real estate and do it passively. Like I've been an investor with Rachel as well, where I mean, I can probably do my own rent to owns in my sleep if I wanted to, but why would I when I can get great returns and get Rachel and Neil to plug me into their system and I don't do anything. It's great, right?
Yeah.
So
And again, all these people have systems.
yeah.
But
Absolutely.
find me someone who has lasting power of Rachel.
Well, they're the best in the business. Anyone out there looking to rent to own, this is your girl. Like,
that's so nice. My
Clover
besties
Properties,
are plugging
No one
me.
holds a candle. No one holds a candle. The
thank you.
Clover, I love. Like, I'm always like, go for them, because a lot of people come, and I've done a whole bunch of rent to owns too. And Julian's right, you can do it yourself too. But our first conversation that we had was, girl,
Why?
how the heck did you manage to make a business of this? Because I did a whole bunch of these rent-owns and sandwich lease offices very early in our career when I was this really cool investor that just knew everything.
Yeah.
I certainly
Wanna
wouldn't
do
use a
creative
coach
stuff.
at that point. Like, why do that? Anyways, and when I heard her system, I'm like, geez, like I would rather just don't waste your time. Just go through Rachel.
Plug and play. I mean, you spend your time doing the things that you can do best, and then you get an expert. Like you hire the club pro to do the strategy you want to get you where you want to go without the work, right?
You need experts. I have experts in every area. Every area. People tell me what to eat. Usually my hair's done. See, this is what happens when I do it myself. This is a real issue.
That's golf hair.
Usually it's
You're
like,
excused. You're
here.
excused.
You don't want your hair down in golf.
No.
I don't know. I don't know what it's like, but so like I mentioned, like qualifying and to quantify. Like Rachel, your tenant buyout rate is unheard of, because I've heard, not heard. I know people who worked in other rent-to-own businesses, and their buyout rate is like single digits percentage.
Wow, that's
And failures.
That's super disappointing.
You're not surprised, are you? If you know these
the
companies.
lowest that I've heard was 30% success
No,
rate.
way lower.
Really?
I've seen
Way
way
lower.
lower.
Really? How
I've
is that a
had
business if
to-
you don't have
no.
like tenant buyouts that are?
Do you know how many clients I've had to help them to get out of their rent to own with just even break even? And then I say, go to Clover Properties the next time. Like, just don't do
If
this.
they haven't lost too much money.
Exactly. And it's tough. It's tough it's sad to see such a great concept be so, but once again, it goes back to the fundamentals. And that's really the systems, because you find great deals and you know how to help the buyers buy the properties.
Absolutely. Well, with rent-to-owns, I think a lot of people approach it from a real estate investing lens. And when you hear real estate investing, you're automatically thinking area, property, numbers. We change that a little bit. With rent-to-own, we think about people first. I don't care about anything else other than the people that we're helping. What is their income situation? What is it going to take for them to keep up with the monthly payments? What is it going to take for them to actually qualify for a mortgage at the end? And once you focus only on creating success for those people, a win-win for those people, everything else just falls into place. I'm not saying that, a property in swampland or Timbuktu nowhere is going to work. We always use those.
What if Shrek wants to be a homeowner?
Right. I'm not saying that, a property in that area won't work, but if I have solid tenant buyers in place, then the rent-to-own deal is much more solid. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that when they're starting out with any strategy. They go at any strategy the same way, and rent-to-own is that one exception.
Yeah, but I also think there's a lot of sort of unsavory people in the space too.
That's
People who
exactly
are
it.
actually hoping for the tenants to fail because they want the property. And I think when you start with integrity in your clients first, then, you just turn the business on its head, right? It had a bad name because there was a lot of kind of unsavory players in the space, but it's successful because you guys are you, and you keep integrity kind of at the forefront, right?
And believe me, during the COVID era where real estate values went up so high, the true nature of some of the investors we work with came through. They were basically like, is that tenant buyer going to exit? Are they really going to do the deal? 5 minutes after the contract expired, that's it, I'm taking over the property. And we're like, wait a minute. They've paid faithfully without any interruption or disruption all the way through COVID. They've maintained the property.
Yeah.
They're going to close on this. Just give them a little bit of time, because lenders are backlogged.
Yeah.
Appraisers are backlogged. It's taking so much longer to close on a deal. But these investors wait a minute, the contract says, and we're like, really? I didn't see it coming from this person. I didn't see it coming from that partner.
Yeah.
People's true colors come out when there's equity to be had. So
And that's the truth about real estate investing.
it is.
Yeah.
And
It is.
Gillian nailed it. There's lots of unsavory characters. Mike Rosehart was quite frank about how difficult many of his JVs were. And when he was on, he shared how because of damages to properties, there was no cash flow at the end of the day, but massive equity gains. But their JVs were still mad. You promised me cash flow. Like, oh man, you did nothing, and you get handed all this money, and you're still upset.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing we can't complain during the whole COVID era. Our cash flow was uninterrupted because we're dealing with home buyers, home buyer mentality. We're not dealing with typical tenants. These home buyers have, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 of down payment money inside of that deal.
Skin in the game.
So much skin in the game, and they've worked so hard to build up that down payment. And then, of course, they're no fool. They also know there's equity in the property.
Yeah, they'd be silly to walk away.
So there's a carrot, but they're motivated. They're super motivated, and they knew if they start missing payments or if they go on CERB and they can't, be as consistent, they would lose out. So I think we had about 85 active deals during COVID, and only one actually asked for a deferral, and then they made up the difference 3 months later, and they exited successfully into ownership.
Can you share your exit? Do you have a percentage of tenants buyers who follow through? Do you know what that is?
1 out of 10. 1 out of 10 falls through.
1 out of 10 falls through. So 90% success rate.
Yeah.
Absolutely unheard of.
Well, okay, I'm going to brag a little bit. It's technically 100% success rate because the 9 out of 10 actually doesn't come to fruition because of a separation or a divorce. So nothing to do with the rent to own per se. The rent to own was going tickety-boo just fine, but if one of the parties decides to move out and they can't keep up, the one that's staying in the matrimonial home can't keep up with the monthly payments, obviously it's going to be reason for them to default.
Life happens.
Life happens, and
But
that's
still, 90% is ridiculous.
that. Yeah. So if you don't take that into the divorce and separation or job loss rate into account, it's 100% success rate.
And then I always joke about the thing about rent to own, and also now that wholesaling's become a thing, and I get some of these emails too. I always found that rent to own businesses, it was like a lesson on Ontario geography.
Because you find out about these little nooks and crannies.
You get an email, and then it's a new rent to own deal, and like, I've never heard of this place before in Ontario. I'm older, so when there was no Google Street View before. But now these days, like, so I remember seeing one about a year or two ago, and I said, well, I've never, and even still, never heard of this town in Ontario. So I Google map it, and I find they do have a street light in that town. And that's where the rent to own deal is. But you don't do that.
No.
Like, where's your boundaries? Do you have geographical boundaries?
Primarily Southern Ontario. We don't really touch Northern Ontario. I just don't feel that the values are appreciating at the desired rate.
How far is Northern? Sudbury, North Bay?
Yeah, like we don't touch
Don't
Sudbury.
go past Barrie.
We'll go a little bit further north than that, but primarily Southern Ontario. You know, Ottawa considered? Yeah, Ottawa's part of Southern Ontario. I really like the Quebec market as well. I can't say that we've fully immersed ourselves in that market, but it's definitely on the radar. I just feel that there is partially we have to consider where the home buyers are moving. Given where the real estate values are today, they're going up. People's incomes are not rising at the same pace. So what it's creating is a need for people to still want home ownership, but they're going out into those little towns that we geographically, like, I didn't even know this town existed. But if you look on the map, it's within a 15-20 minute drive of St. Thomas or, you know, of Aurelia. And they're smaller pockets. That ripple effect. We've all heard about the ripple effect. You know, Don Campbell often talked about that at our RAIN meetings, and that really is coming into play now.
So where are you guys investing now? Actually, even before that. Do mothers have challenges investing? Because again, my context is different. I know you guys.
Do mothers, like mothers?
Do they feel they can't invest in real estate?
I think everyone feels.
Do they feel there's barriers to investing?
I think as parents in general, I think we kind of, yes, we're mothers, of course, but
Mothers
we have
and others.
Mothers and others. We have this parenting lens. When you're entering the world of real estate, when you have small children and you have more risks, everything seems riskier. I don't know. When I became a mother, everything was a risk. So for me, that was a barrier when we got started. But I was willing to. I was the mother that was willing to persevere.
Yeah.
My husband is a bit of a ninny, and he was saying no because he was afraid of the risk. So I don't think it's just mothers who could be risk averse. I think
it's anyone who has
too.
the risk. So we like to equate it to Shark Tank when Mark Cuban says, you should live in your car and eat craft dinner. And we're like, yeah, you can't do that with kids.
No.
So we have mouths to feed. We have mortgages to pay.
They love macaroni and cheese.
But the thing is, there's a risk. And so I think there's so much fear behind investing in real estate in general. Put it with responsibilities and people who have real adult things, and you can't put your kids in jeopardy. So there's a huge fear factor. And the best thing about real estate is it doesn't have to be risky. If you know what you're doing, it's the most lucrative investment that you can have. And everyone needs active real estate in their portfolio. They need 1 to 3 properties in their portfolio, and that could even include their personal residence. One investment property will change your entire financial future. If you just grab one home in a high growth area, just pay off the mortgage for 25 years, say you're 40, buy a $375 home, just pay off the mortgage for 25 years, you're gonna have a $1.25 million property ready for your retirement at 65. And that's going up 5%. So, and we all know they're way higher, and that's why a lot of Rachel's rent-to-own people were probably like, ooh, because the property's probably tripled in value and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's
They're leaving some money on the table.
but they made such a great investment. So they're making between 20 to 40%.
What are your investors making?
30%.
Again, past does not predict future, folks.
That's right. Well, I can kind of speak to a recent deal that we just did, and we're seeing about 33% return on investment. So
to your investor?
No, to me.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just going off of my numbers because with rent-to-owns, the cost of borrowing is a really pivotal component. So the lower the lower your cost of borrowing, the better. But of course, I don't have $100,000 sitting around every time I'm doing a deal, so I'm pulling it out of my HELOC. My personal residence goes up in value. It's like a cash cow in of itself. So I pull out the $100K, put it into a $500,000 property, and that $100,000 turns into double basically. And part of it comes through cash flow, part of it is the profit from the sale, and and I'm using the bank's money. So 33% return on investment by using my line of credit, and basically a 30-year amortization with a 2% interest rate. That's all it takes.
Yeah, leverage is huge.
Huge.
We were just talking about risks. So like when I laid when my daughter was born, I was laying awake at night, and the risk to me was, how am I going to afford this thing? Right? It's probably going to want to go to university. It's probably going to need its own house.
They're unaffordable.
So the risk to me was, how am I supposed to pay for this?
Yeah.
And I'm lazy, so I don't want to delay my retirement. So that's why I bought her a house. Right? That would be her RESP and a down payment on a future home. Like, to me, that's a risk. Do you see this out there in the community? Do they not see what's coming?
No, they do things the traditional way because that's what they've been told. So people trade time for money. They're working at jobs that they're getting underpaid for. They try to save 10%, and they invest like the wealthy barber, and they're investing in conventional products that are maybe performing at, if you do an annualized return for the set it and forget it mutual funds, you're at 5%. You minus the M.O.R.E, the management expense ratios, which is 2.5%, then minus inflation. The average Canadian is growing their money at 1.2%.
Put it into a GIC,
which is now even guaranteed to go broke. So they're not even growing their money, and then society is becoming more expensive, and people's wages are not growing the same way like they used to be. We have more people coming, there's more competition, and these are skilled people too, with university degrees, engineers, IT professionals. You can't afford to work. Job is just over broke, no matter what you do.
And so many people I still find in today's world are working hard to pay off their mortgage on their personal residence. And every time I hear that, I have exactly the same reaction as Erwin. I giggle.
Yeah.
But so they're trying to pay off their primary mortgage, and they look at taking on a mortgage for investment property as debt.
Yeah.
And they do not.
It's all reversed.
And I cannot, for the life of me, I have some really smart friends, and they think that I'm crazy for having mortgage debt. I'm like, I would like to die with
so much
as much debt as I possibly can. I'm not talking about debt on my credit cards.
Not consumer debt.
Good debt.
Not
Big
consumer
difference.
debt, but productive debt. And many of them will say they find that is the risk. They think of a mortgage as risky debt.
But then they'll go and buy a car, and have
Depreciating
$1,000 car payment. Or worse, they'll take $75,000 of their little pennies that they saved and buy a car. And it's like, what? So you won't buy a down payment because that's risky, but you're going to buy a car, a depreciating asset. Like, people just have it all backwards. And I think that's one of our missions here too, is really to challenge traditional financing and finance education, and really educate these mothers and others. And they love the others part. But you know what? It is couples and parents and anyone who really has stuff to put on the line. And really just put a tailspin. Like, Robert Kiyosaki's brilliant at this stuff, and they changed our life. Like, his book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, it won't teach you to do real estate, but it will give you a 180 on your financial education. So now when I hear people say, oh, you should be like Rachel said it well, she's leveraging her personal residence. She has a great home. There's a lot of money sitting there. We live in an area that's very expensive. We had someone... You remember in 2017 when the markets went down because they imposed a tax on the foreign buyers? There was a big crash. There was a man who was convinced that he lost $300,000, and he was livid. And I'm like, did you sell your home? No, but I lost $300,000 because the value went down $300,000.
How much is his home?
Well, all of our homes are probably anywhere between $1 to $3 million where we all live.
Yeah.
And so. Well, now it's $1 million for a townhouse. It's ridiculous. But he was convinced that he lost, and he was an older guy, maybe 55, probably had no mortgage, and he lost this $300,000. I'm like, until you sell, you haven't lost anything. And you also haven't made anything for all the people out there as well who have all this equity sitting in this home, because that can change. Things can happen. They can lose, like really lose that money and not have access to it in the future. Whereas most people say, I can't afford to invest in real estate. You have 1, 2, or 3 down payments sitting in your house. The riskiest thing you could do is not be educated and not do anything at all.
Yeah, I have a thing with debt. I call it debt equity. It's not working for me. It could be worse. So are you guys still investing? Because I've heard of plenty. I'm not investing in this market. Or at all-time highs. Not going to invest anymore. You're closing down the businesses, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
yeah, winding down, just gonna golf.
Yeah, we want to do more golf lessons. You better close your business too.
No, we've ramped up.
You've ramped up.
With rent to own. We ramped up. COVID has brought a lot more demand to the surface, so we had to ramp up and set new records and improve our systems and processes to accommodate the volume. Because my goal is not to necessarily continue to work harder. My goal was to wind down, and that just didn't happen. So we're offsetting these demands on our time by hiring people. It's the who, not the how. Mm-hmm. And I follow that philosophy, and automation, systemization, and hiring people. So you can still do what you love and scale it, and not necessarily have to be doing it daily. So you can get out there and golf and spend time and go off to places like Costa Rica for almost 3 months.
We'll get to that.
That's fun.
Actually, I just remembered there was a research group that said it's not a good time to rent to own.
Oh yes.
That was a while ago now. I meant to have you on since then. But if it's not a good time to rent to own, that's more of a poke at the general market. If it's not a good time to rent to own, it's not a good time to anything for residential real estate. Like, comments?
Maybe for most people, it's not a good time to rent to own if they're other companies that don't know what they're doing. But this is Miss Research over here. She showed up to the TV thing with those full booklets. You should have seen these things. I'm telling you, she knows her stuff. And Neil's very conservative as well. And I think, like she says, they bet on people and they have a proven strategy. If you have a proven strategy, proven system, you can pivot with anything. And this is what COVID's shown: the winners versus the losers.
So speaking of winners and losers, no one's perfect. Everyone
present company
excluded. Hello.
No one's
he obviously
perfect.
hasn't met us before.
Economists aren't perfect. But if you're wrong, admit that you're wrong, and then say why you're wrong and learn from that. How you're going to repeat that, right? For example, there's been companies that say buy Alberta. For example, they've been saying buy Alberta for the longest time, and then. Was it 2 years ago? Someone said don't do rent to own, and then there's crazy people that said real estate should have popped 10 years ago. The bubble should have burst 10 years ago. But anyways, if you'd listen to bad advice, could you imagine?
They don't know what they're talking about. If it leads, it bleeds. And I don't know why these economists are saying that. Maybe they're making it out and they just want to make some impactful statement.
Right. Most of the mainstream ones that we follow, they've been pretty on. CMHC has been missing, not in the last year, but previous to that they were missing slightly, but they were still bullish. But I mean, but there are paid companies that we paid for research from that didn't hit it on the head. Actually, they're quite wrong on the oil being bullish on oil in Alberta. But it's okay to be wrong, but then admit you're wrong. And then where do you go from here? Right?
Don't they say fail quickly? If you're going to fail quickly. Recognize when you've made a mistake, cut your losses super fast, and then pivot right away. Don't drag it out. Fail forward and fail fast and fail forward.
But this is the thing. We're in real estate. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Shelter. Homes aren't going anywhere. The economists could say whatever the heck they want. People need places to live. And that's our job to give them to them. As long as we buy right, and we have exit strategies in place, real estate can withstand fluctuations in the market. We're not these emotional, risky buyers. We're not out here putting in multiple offer situations and overpaying for homes. We know those fundamentals. We know those systems. I had one of our investors bought a great flip in Calgary. He's working it out. Calgary can be a fantastic market. We had some great presentations on Calgary about how to recession-proof your investment because it is a boom-bust market. Yes, that's true. It's oil. It's resource-based. It's also a great city. And
That's a beautiful
they're
city.
also, it's a beautiful city, and there's also ways that you can make money in those cities. At least it's not like Timbuktu. A lot better to go to Calgary than it is to North Bay, Owen Sound, Sudbury even. Why not go to someplace that has those strong economic fundamentals? Now, in this case, yes, it has to be recognized that it is resource-based and it could be, but there's other factors happening in Calgary, and there's ways that you can invest in these markets. It's not a market to avoid, but it's also not a market for the faint of heart to go in and just overpay. Because Gillian, I think remember we were talking, you're like, I know people that haven't even recouped their investment when they invested in there in like
we have mutual friends
2006
We have some friends.
or 7.
We have friends in
And
Calgary.
so what did they do? They
Or
probably
in
bought
Edmonton.
high.
Yeah.
Who bought like near the
Edmonton,
peak or
they-
even buying on the way down.
Yeah.
Like there is no huge unicorn or like leading horse stallion that's gonna, this isn't Bitcoin or crypto. It's not gonna skyrocket and we're gonna wake up like multi-zillionaires. It's a slow and steady race. And if it's done strategically and properly, it will beat out any of these types of investments.
And just to clarify, folks, like we're talking, like we're all area experts. We're not talking about, like for example, we were talking about Portugal. I don't know if we were recording at the time, but a lot of Southern European countries, for example, are shrinking in population. So we're not talking about all real estate goes up. It's just the stuff that we're focused on. Hopefully, keeps going up.
I know nothing about Portugal real estate, so you know
It's a
there's-
beautiful place to visit.
But if you wanted to
I will
invest
rent.
there,
I will happily rent.
Yes.
yeah, if you wanted to do that, then you have to figure out how that works. Because I'm sure there is a lucrative way to invest.
I'm sure there is.
too.
I'm sure it is.
But you got to figure it out, and you have to know how to put the fundamentals
Yeah.
in the market.
I think the key is to narrow down your focus, not just on area, it's also on strategy, and just become an area market expert. That's what we teach in our course. That's when beginners come to us and say, well, where do I start? Which market do I focus on? And oftentimes we say as narrow of a focus as possible, become an expert so that you can discern whether that research that you're reading is relevant to what you're doing. And I think getting involved with people that are in the trenches is really important. So get multiple perspectives. Yes, there's people sitting in their ivory towers doing research, and that research, as we've seen, is not always
Not always
reliable.
perfect. Yeah.
And it's not perfect, and there are nuances with rent-own. Just to address that point, where when we heard the research coming out saying it's now a bad time to rent-own, we were having probably a record quarter in terms of volume. And how I can explain that is that there's different approaches. There's different strategies when it comes to rent-own. There's the people-first strategy, which is where we play, and there's the property-first strategy, where I think a lot of people approach rent-owns from. And when you do a property-first strategy, which I think the researchers were looking at it from, that's where there's a higher failure rate.
Why wouldn't they just ask you to talk about it?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Maybe we'll inspire them through this conversation.
So again, so we talked about like not everyone's always right, but you have to have some point to pivot, right? Versus like I think we all have some friends that are in Alberta that there was never any leading voices on how to pivot, right? Versus when we had Greg Hapsterd on, he's like, don't.
Well, sometimes you have to know when to walk away.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. And that might be your best strategy.
Like I don't
Just
follow
cut your
all
losses.
the research out there, so I don't actually know if they ever said like it's time to cut your losses. Like for example, like some of us do stock options and we do stocks and stuff like that. But we when you get in, there's a planned stop, right? Was there ever the saying like, "Hey, we were wrong. Get out of the city," right? Like in my opinion, like I'm not an expert. Oil's I don't think it's an ongoing concern, right? I think it'll be very small. It will still those like rural places will always like farm machinery, for example. There'll always be need for oil, but I think it's gonna be massive reductions. Like Jay Leno even said, like in 10 years, all cars will be electric, right? If all cars are electric in 10 years, like how much oil do we need?
You'll still need it for the farm machinery and some other industrial types of processes. But
But what
universally
percentage? How much do we need?
Yeah, universally speaking. And I think governments are actually mandating this policy of more electric cars, and the infrastructure for electrical cars is expanding and growing. I own an electric vehicle, and I see.
Oh, is it here? I want to see it.
It's here, and we've seen even during COVID. You'd think that things would be at a standstill, but we've actually seen more charging stations pop up throughout Ontario while people were in lockdown. That was incredible.
Do you love it?
Love it.
Can we say what it is?
Sure.
What is it?
Tesla Model X.
Beautiful.
It's red. It's gorgeous.
It's red.
It's red and gorgeous. I've been in the front seat. Haven't driven it, but sat in it.
Can we see it after?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Go sit in the front. It's nice.
So cool. So I figure where I was going. So my point being is, because I track statistics all the time. Because I remember like pre-2019, like during the oil boom, for example, roughly about 36% of immigrants would come to Ontario, right? 36% of immigrants would come to Ontario. In 2019, so post-oil boom, I think it was around 34% were coming to Toronto, just to the city, right? Because if there's no jobs out there, there's no reason to be out there. They're all coming here.
It's great for our economy.
It's great for our economy. So when we say real estate's going to go up, like we're getting more percentage of the immigrants. And the last article I read was the federal government still wants 400,000 immigrants this year to catch up for last year, right?
But the government sends them to different places too.
They do.
They don't. So Winnipeg, the Maritimes, Calgary.
All beautiful places.
And they will, Saskatchewan, they'll probably send them to these places, and then whether they want to stay or not afterwards, that's the problem, I think. But there's other industries in Calgary. It's not just resource-based. And then they are growing in a lot of different areas. But in this market, when I'm looking at the prices, even they're in multiple offer bidding wars. And now these fourplex homes and stuff, we were looking at, because we were doing conversions before, now that's over $1 million. And I said to our specialist, this price is way too high for this now. Like this, we got to get this scale back and focus on this sort of number, because you have to make the money when you buy. They say there's the imitators, the innovators like us, the imitators, people who follow, and then the idiots. And those are the ones that are overpaying in these markets, and they're just so excited. And this goes back to behavioral finance. And it's huge. Behavioral finance is huge. We're like, people are like sheep. Something bad happens and everyone sells. And you said it perfectly. We have planned stops. And in real estate, you have to have planned stops. Her strategy is a planned stop. Regardless of what the market's doing, you're stopping, you're getting your really great percent.
Well, maybe the 10 doesn't buy but you never had that problem. Prices have only gone one direction.
Listen, at the end of the day, the rent-own strategy is super lucrative if the tenant buyer fails, and that's why it has such a bad rap, and that's why so many people speculate on it. But the way we structure it is that we set the roadmap for the tenant buyer to succeed. We give them every opportunity. We give them the support that they need. If they default due to whatever their personal circumstances are, then we are the beneficiary of the upside of that property. Yeah. So that is, we earned it.
It rarely happens.
It doesn't happen that often, but when it does, we win it. We won it fair and square. And as Monika said,
give them a lot of chances.
Absolutely. And as Monika said, though, we make money on the buy. So we make money if the tenant buyer succeeds, and we make lots of money if the tenant buyer does. But we're making lots of money either way, and we're doing this to help people succeed. So I'm happy when they do, and they get the benefit of that equity. But if they don't do what they need to do, my conscience is absolutely clear, and I can then pocket the lucrative returns.
Right. And I don't mean for it to be a rent-own show, but I do have a question though. Like when you're buying properties for rent-own purposes, are you doing like a BRRRR strategy? You buying these things off market? They're like trashed, and you can get them under value and stuff. You're buying with cash and stuff. Like what are you doing? How do you actually acquire a property?
So what you just described is more of a property first approach, where you buy properties and you have to obviously bring them up to current value by putting some lipstick on them. That's too much hassle for my liking. That's dealing with contractors and people and that is dealing with property. That's the nuances of a property. And then on top of that, I have to now find people who will be able to afford it, who love it, and want to move in when my next mortgage payment is due. That's a lot of pressure, and I can be swayed it to make bad choices about the people that I'm trying to put into that property. So we don't do rent-owns that way. We, like I was saying earlier, focus on the people first. So who are the people? What do they need? Where do they need to find the ideal property? And once we've established the framework, they go house hunting. They find the property. They save me a lot of legwork. And then in return, they're finding a property that they're emotionally connected to. So they're financially connected to the property, they're emotionally connected to the property. I have a much more secure deal before I've even closed on it. And that's really where the success formula starts.
Because they pick it. They're buying their own house.
So the tenants are going with the realtor to go see property?
Absolutely.
Right.
And they're picking move-in ready properties, and that's a really important consideration.
Or if it wasn't, I'm sure they could live with whatever deficiency it had.
That's right.
Because they're buying it for themselves. So
Exactly.
Have they ever improved the property themselves?
Absolutely.
The tenant buyer I had on my property, I remember him emailing me saying, I just did the back deck. I just installed new staircases on the back. He just kept improving the property when I owned it. And
Recently? That'd be like $50,000.
He did electrical stuff. He did back deck. He did stairs. I'm like, okay, great. And I just knew it was going to be a successful exit. He'd put all this extra money in.
That's right. They're much more committed because they're improving the space. They know the upside of that effort. And should they default, well, Gillian or the investor on title is the beneficiary of all of that effort.
Yeah.
But you were still satisfied with your rate of return, even though that tenant buyer exercised their option to purchase and took ownership of a property that had more equity in it.
So this is the thing. I figure that, so it was a property in Hamilton. So I'm like, oh, when you think about the equity, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm missing this upside. But you're not missing any upside. I didn't sign up to buy a property that I ran myself because I could have gone and bought my own property that I own myself, which I do in Hamilton. So I had to say, am I happy with the 30% return a year and all this cash flow in order for my tenant to get the equity upside? And if I wasn't happy with that, then I should have just gone and bought my own property in Hamilton so that I could have benefited from the whole process from A to B. So I just figure it kind of gets greedy. Like,
Which
either,
still
if
wouldn't
you want
give
all
you
the
that
money,
much
then do
more.
overwork. Well, it would have. It probably.
If you held it for
It could have with the
long-term,
with the
lots of
long-term.
long-term mortgage pay down.
But the cash on cash is pathetic in comparison to what she offers.
Yeah.
The cash on cash return is so much
It
more.
was, but I would have said the equity would have blown it out of the water.
Oh, well, that because of the long term, though.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and plus it was just when Hamilton went kind of straight up, but still, that was, I wanted a cash investment that had good cash flow, and so I made that choice. And so it didn't feel like a disappointment to me because I could have done either. Like, I could have bought a house myself and benefited. But
you had the ideal scenario. You have a portfolio of long-term buy, rent, hold properties that are student rentals that have a huge cash flow. So you have the benefit of the longevity, plus you have the high cash flow. Rent-own doesn't have the longevity, but it has hands-off.
Right.
And sometimes your sanity and free time is worth not having to hold a property for the long term, still benefit from lucrative returns.
Well, and I'm kind of like Monika now too. I'm like, how do I invest money to get passive income rather than to do the work? Like, you like your rent to own so that, you know, it's easy. You don't want tenants and toilets and all the like headachy, yucky parts.
But you're a very diversified investor, Gillian.
Yeah,
you're incredible, and
I've done a lot of different things, I would say, over the
A
years.
lot.
And you always say,
A lot.
"Let make it fit with your life, not fight with your life."
I love that.
We've all been in this for over 11 years, you know, all of us, and it's your needs change as your family changes and your life changes, and like real estate investing, your strategies change too, which is really exciting. So right now, it's hard to get properties for the right price, and while you're waiting, you may as well be leveraging your existing assets and investing passively. Why not?
I'm
You
enjoying
can't
this
do
show.
nothing. If you're sitting still, you're just losing money. Like, the worst thing people can do is hoard their money in their bank account. Like Robert Kiyosaki says, savers are losers.
Wait,
Because it loses value.
I can one up that. My parents still put their money into the mattress.
Literally.
I swear. They have seen the abundance that real estate has created, and they're still not convinced. They're like, no, we do it our way. This is the way. We know. We put it in. It's there.
Wait,
they
where
feel safe.
are your parents from?
Well, I'm also from there too, Ukraine.
Right.
I'm an immigrant. I came to Canada in 1980 went to Winnipeg, Manitoba, Winterpeg,
Because they made you?
because that's where they were at that time, kind of steering
I told you. But they
new
left.
immigrants.
They left.
They were steering new immigrants towards Winnipeg, especially ones with a Ukrainian
It's lovely there,
background.
by the way. I hear.
So yeah,
I know some great investment opportunities in the Peg. You can, and it doesn't have to be the ones that are the boarded up houses in the Peg. There, you could even invest in Winnipeg, in nice opportunities. It can exist.
So your parents coming from the Ukraine, like they're, I don't know the whole history behind it, but never mind. Did they invest in gold at least? There's dollars cash, not even gold.
They don't believe in any form of investing. They don't even believe in credit cards. Cold, hard cash.
Was there better inflation or something?
Yeah, they just don't
Yeah,
understand.
did they live through hyperinflation?
They did, yeah.
And they not even gold.
Nope.
No.
No. And,
Bitcoin would melt their
and
brain.
I'm trying to lead by example, and they're like, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
We're proud of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my lord! Not even gold.
No.
I don't get that.
My father thinks we're crazy that we've leveraged our house and that we invest in real estate. He tries to warn me. I'm like, Dad, I do this for a living. We're doing deals like every day. Like we're counseling
okay.
investors
You don't need to
in
worry
markets all across. I think I'm good.
What does he say when he sees your net worth?
We don't talk about money, first of all, so
Okay.
he has no idea. And he just says, you do it, hope you make $1 billion, and I don't want to know anything about it. And that's it. But not having jobs, because Vaughn
Right.
and I both do this full time,
Right.
I think he thinks that's a bit
That you're unemployed. You
not
think you're
so.
unemployed?
Yeah, and he just doesn't, he's like, he just sees 4 kids and no jobs and be like, good luck to you. And then a lot of properties. And yeah, then he says he's not interested. Maybe he thinks I'm going to hit him up for an investment or something. But
Wait,
I don't
so
think so.
we're talking about mothers and let's talk about parents. Like, what did they teach you about money? How did you guys accomplish what you did? Your parents have these kind of attitudes towards money.
I had to not tell my parents for 5 years. I was investing in real estate.
What
so
year was this? How old were
we
you?
were such naysayers because when Vaughn and I were 24, we found our first investment property in Australia. We put $500 down this lot. We thought we found the house of our dreams. Somehow we got qualified.
For $500.
It was
Could have been.
that was the deposit.
Okay.
It was in a golf. It was a blue chip
It was new
estate area.
new construction, right?
It was new construction land house package in the golf
$500.
estate area. It was $500 down, and that was a lot for us. And Vaughn had his savings. He was actually really good at that. For some reason, I don't know. It just all happened. We flew home to Canada. I told my parents about this dream house that we designed. They're like, "You're gonna sink. You're crazy. Forget that. That's nuts. Get out." So we went back and we're like, "Yeah, they're right. Like, we want out. Give us our $500 back, you scam artist." And this developer's like, "I think that you really should go for this, Monika and Vaughn." Like, "You're a scammer." So we take our $500 and fast forward 2 years later, I was getting my master's degree. We're still living in Australia. We're married at this point. We have a baby. And I Googled Glen Iris Estates, and it was worth $1.3 million. The property.
And what was the initial
From
purchase
500 to
price?
220,000
Wow.
for the land home. Beautiful. It was a blue chip golf course. Like, you should have seen this place. This was
That
like
hurts.
the
That's
place.
really painful.
And so I never listened to them after that point. So because of the naysayers, like, we had to make a decision as a married couple. And I think all the others, the mothers and others, or whoever's out there, you got to learn, to cut the apron strings and live life on your terms and make your own decisions, because these people aren't helping you. My parents will criticize me about money and the way we do things, and they don't give me any money. So I tell them.
And they cost you $800,000.
And they cost me $800,000. Exactly. So I have that. That's in our book. It's called The One That Got Away.
Are your
That
parents rich?
chapter. Yeah.
Really?
My parents were entrepreneurs.
Oh.
And they did really well for themselves. And as a business owner, but they've always been very conservative. So, but they've always lived life on their terms. So they led by example, but we're too scared
Interesting.
for me to do the same.
Because to me, real estate's like we buy.
And they never invested in real estate.
To me, investing in real estate, it's a small business, right? I am a housing service provider. I have customers. We call them tenants. Where I invest, there's like a 1% vacancy rate. So it's a complete seller's market of rental property, rental space. So to me, it's a business. And there's all these immigrants coming, and people keep coming to town, and they keep paying me more rent. Rents keep going up, right? It's a business.
It is.
Like, what's the threat to them?
They would say
Not threat to them,
tenants
but-
and toilets. They own multiple, so
okay.
they own their house. We had ski chalets.
Yeah,
we had
yeah.
a place in Florida.
Yeah.
I think they rented that once, like never ever did that again. They rented it to someone they knew. But they were just terrified of the tenants and toilets.
Yeah.
And, you know, as entrepreneurs, I guess they felt that they couldn't take
Control
that
that
risk.
risk.
They just wanted to use their stuff and pay down debt and invest in stocks. Now, I lived, like my dad invested in Bre-X. And
Gold, good.
exactly. I remember, you know, the stock market. Because I grew up with this stuff too, and I've seen it. This is why I've never ever invested in stocks because it terrifies the hell of me. Because
Yeah,
I've
gold.
seen huge wins
Gold exploration,
in
mining.
the stock market, and then I've seen the big losses as well.
Yeah.
And paired with the entrepreneurship and that stress, I never been comfortable investing in stocks. I'm like you, and I see it like real estate. If you just can get those systems, manage those tenants. I mean, look, student rental, rent to own, buy, rent, hold. Like, it's doable. If you really are that scared, you know, it could be get someone else to do it. Get a joint venture partner. Know how to suss out your joint venture partner and totally get them to run it. I'm sure anyone here would take a joint venture partner. We can manage the investment and run it. And then they don't have to worry about any of that. And they're still going to get these double-digit returns, but they have to know how to vet their joint venture partner. You have to learn the fundamentals of real estate.
Yeah, whether you're doing it yourself or you're going to work through a joint venture partner, you really need to understand what you're looking for and what success really looks like. And that requires understanding and learning and getting to know the basics and then building up your knowledge. And I mean, if we're talking on the parent side of things, that's the part that was missing for me. When I was about 29 years old, I said to my parents that I want to buy a property. And of course, my parents were doing this 180. Where did you get that idea? As a matter of fact, I got that idea from...
No, wait, can you do it in the accent?
Where did you get that idea? So I actually got the idea from the parents of an ex-boyfriend. Because when I was dating a boyfriend in my teens, his parents owned a property in St. Clair, Dufferin area. A little bit, you know, a little more rundown, kind of I think it was a duplex. And every Saturday night, my boyfriend and I would head downtown, you know, which is what, you know, teenagers do. And on the way to go downtown once a month, he'd say, oh, I just need to stop by and pick up a rent check. So this is what I kind of grew up watching, go, wait a minute. So you drop by once a month, they give you a check, you hand that check to your parents, and they're making money. Yeah. Okay, noted. So when it came time for me to say I want to own a property, my first thought was to buy a house with a basement in it so that I could have a tenant giving me that rent check. And I didn't know anything about the fundamentals of real estate. I just thought, okay, well, wouldn't it be great? Somebody's paying, it's kind of having like a roommate, but they pay my rent and their own. That's what I had in the back of my mind. I'm like, no, you single girl, you don't need headache. Too much headache. No. This is how my parents spoke to me. They shut me down. And because I wasn't surrounded by like-minded people, I didn't have the other side of the story. I miss having people saying, wait a minute, this is how you manage that hassle. This is how you could, you know, offset those concerns that your parents have. And instead, I listened to them. And my first purchase was a loft down in Etobicoke. But
Could have had the duplex.
I could have had a duplex and I could have ventured into real estate investing sooner, but you know, hindsight, yeah, I got talked out of it. So my parents had more relief when I actually bought a loft, and it was, you know, it was party central. It was great. And then
And a cash pit, money pit, probably.
well, you know, at the time,
I like a duplex, yeah.
yeah. It would have definitely been more lucrative to go the duplex route, but nonetheless, I learned about 3 years later when I went to sell it that I just made $80,000
doing nothing.
living.
Tax-free.
Cha-ching. That was my first introduction to the fact that my parents have no clue what they're talking about. And this real estate thing is tangible and I need to erase all of their doubt and just immerse myself in knowledge from people who knew what they were talking about. That was a really expensive lesson to understand that, you know, your family is going to influence you. Your family doesn't understand enough to influence you adequately in all cases.
Especially when cultural. So we're both from Eastern European families. And my parents came from like displaced persons camp. That's where they spent most of their life before they immigrated to Canada. And so this was hugely in our family. We were raised with that from people who came from Lithuania. And, what they had was a totally different experience than what we have today. And so I think that those norms and the fear factor could even be even more so. Now, I know a lot of new immigrants come and sometimes are the best people to work with because they've already taken that risk. They've taken that, left their country and everything. They know they work past the fear. So I think they need to keep up with that momentum and really get these structures and work with people who can show them how it's done here. Mm-hmm. So I think there is a lot of cultural, deep-seated roots and values, but those don't work anymore. This is 2021. Sorry if I totally date stamped your podcast, Sherman, but it is 2021. And, what worked there then, and even what worked in 2000 does not work now. So people need to constantly be changing and assessing. And like you said, pay attention to the stats, learn, be part of groups. And really have your finger on the pulse because things are changing at a fast pace, and you don't want to be left behind.
Things are always changing, and kind of like Rachel, you were both saying, you kind of have to challenge your assumptions. That's something I try to do all the time. Is like, where did that assumption come from?
Yeah, but and also in all of your groups too. I feel like you are the master of bringing. Well, no, I mean you're the master of bringing different people and different thoughts together, right? Yeah. And so it's really through. I don't know, I just feel like so much of my decisions have been made by aligning myself with smart people who have the same kind of goals as me, which is, progress and learning. And that's where all the good ideas for like different investment strategies come from. So I would have never invested in a rent-own had I not met you, and I've done stock hacking because of you. I started real estate investing because of you. I mean, everything, there's a lot of, I just think that group, being with smart people who are thinking differently than you will just open your eyes to ideas that you would never would have had otherwise, right?
Absolutely.
I remember telling a friend, and I didn't know. This is the worst thing, right? A friend of mine said, "Oh, did you know that they're 3D printing houses already?" I said, "No way! I've seen 3D printers. You print little trinkets. There's no way you can print a building." He goes, "No, go YouTube it." I'm like, okay, I'll YouTube it. Like, good Lord, they're 3D printing houses, right? And but people aren't always open to new information, right? There's still people who don't believe in gold, right? People believe in stuffing cash in the mattress. It's like, wow, not even gold.
So to that point, so we've done a total 180. So what my parents didn't teach me about money, I'm compensating now with my kids, just as you guys are.
I wanted to get there. What are you teaching your kids about money, investing, life?
Invest in gold. So she was 14 when she bought her first gold. So we always teach kind of the GIST method. The GIST method is something that I learned through one of the real estate investing membership groups that I was a part of. We've all been a part of that group, and they had a weekend seminar that taught children about money. So they had a segment for the parents, and then they had a segment for the kids. The kids were in their own room, and the biggest takeaway was the GISS, GISS. So you have a certain proportion of your money goes to giving, certain proportion goes to investing, certain proportion to saving, and certain proportion to spending. And that was a real eye-opener for me, because I was learning alongside my young child at the time, and I taught Riley to basically, my job was, okay, here's the fundamentals, now let's put it into practice. And it takes effort. It takes effort to stay on top of your children, to say, okay, you got $200 for your birthday and for Christmas, put it in your GIST jars, and let's see how much money you have accumulated for an investment. And then she would come up and say, Mom, I have like $80. What am I going to do? I can't buy a house. I can't, I can't do anything with this money. So we started researching online, and gold came up. So she has been buying, tiny little plates of gold with her $120, $180. Now she's up to $660 that she's going to spend on gold. Nice. And this is teaching her some of the basic fundamentals. And in the background, she's hearing all about real estate and equity, and cash flow. And she's on the receiving end from all of the wonderful things that's buying our family. The opportunities to travel, the cars that we find fun.
Cars? That's just one.
Yeah. So she's on the receiving end. So she's actually tangibly experiencing what it took to get there, and she's participating in it to her best ability. So that's what I'm really focused on teaching. Passing on this knowledge to my child has been probably the most beneficial reward of this entire journey over the past 11 years.
Yeah.
And then Gillian, Monika, you guys teach your kids different. we had Well, some of your kids are older than Monica's.
I think we all have kids of all different ages. Well, my son actually came with the cutest note last week, and it was written on it. I was on a call, and it said, "At school they're teaching us financial literacy, but I know everything because you taught me."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, that's so cute." So he's like the little expert. And this is the kid who's 11 who knew the cost of Bitcoin. I never told him that. So I stay out of it entirely. They live it. They see Vaughn and I living our best lives. And they're like, wow, like who else has two parents that are home all the time, able to be at every single basketball game, every single gymnastics comp, dance thing. They probably wish we'd probably go away more. But we're there. And the fact that we're present really kind of instills in their mind, like, wow, I'm going to do something different rather than getting a job. So our oldest is 17. He's had his own business for 3 or 4 years now, reselling basketball shoes. I never told him to do it. I totally stay out of it.
That's big business now too.
He just reselling. We give him drives and we'll do whatever, but he finds that he's negotiating, he's doing whatever.
How old?
He's 17. He started this when he was about 14 or 15.
Yeah. And
I don't know, he just always has money and he does his own stuff. And then sometimes he's short a bit. And he asked my 11-year-old for a loan, who hit him up and charged him 30% interest. And I don't know where he learned that, but he's like a hard money lender. So it was just, and I don't have anything to do with the conversations. Another one went to school and bought all these candies off Amazon and went to school and started selling the candies for 25 cents. But then that wasn't good enough. He sold them for 50 cents. That wasn't good enough. He then says, hey, you have a choice. You could buy this candy for 50 cents, or you could buy the option to win the candy for 25 cents, and then I'll rock, paper, scissors you. So I said,
how old's this kid?
He was about maybe 11 or 12 when he was doing that. I said, you're either going to go to jail or you're going to be really, really rich. So he was running like an illicit gambling ring. And so it's just, like I say, we stay out of it. We don't have anything to do with it. And our daughter, her finger's pretty much on the pulse as well. So I think when they just live it, and when they were younger, they see like all the properties. They see me on the computer all the time. And like someone, are we moving? If we're moving every time I'm on MLS, we'd be moving like every single day. And so I think it just goes osmosis with them. And I did get them some silver coins. Just to continue that immersion, continue the conversations, not for it to be worth anything, but just to show them it's a 2020 silver coin. This was an epic year. Is this going to be worth $1 zillion one day? Probably not, but it's just a commemorative thing, and investing in resources can be lucrative. So I love it, and I'm hoping that they'll be influenced. I think learning through osmosis is a lot. Like you said, when I grew up, my parents always had these second homes and third homes or whatever. I loved it. The apron strings were cut. I wanted to afford it, could not. I better start doing something different. So I think that was the biggest lesson they've ever taught me.
Mm-hmm. And again, we call investing in real estate, but to me, this is small business.
It's just investing. It's just living, like creating your best life. Just being in control of your resources. The day the freedom comes is when the ego is removed. When you don't need to be a hot shot running around, living your life, other people watching you. When you have that freedom that you achieve in your own terms, and that's all everyone really wants. You don't have anything to prove to anyone. You just want to be there and have that control and just live your best life.
Gillian, are you teaching your kids about money? Because you have a lot of them.
Yeah, well, Monika and I both have 4 kids.
You have 4 too?
Yeah. There's 10 amongst us.
There's 10 amongst the 3 of us. Again, like Monika and Rachel were saying too, I think a lot of what they are learning about money is from watching what we've done. I mean,
but you do everything.
We've done, we talk a lot about what we're they saw us grow a big business and sell a big business, and they have been hearing about rental properties forever and ever. And my older son, who's 20, invested in cryptocurrency with me last summer. Yeah. And it's been a fascinating journey for that, because, he got in pretty early and so made a really amazing return for a 20-year-old, like lots and lots of money.
Oh boy, fast money. Young and fast money.
And so, it was some really good conversations happened with that, because after his return, so I don't know, I think he like 8 times his money or something like that. And I said, it's not going to go up forever, you know.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And I said, you need to think long and hard about what is going to be more painful for you. Whether it will be more painful if you sell some now, if you take some profit, because no one ever goes poor from taking profits, and you miss an upside, or if you don't sell and it drops and then you lose this wealth you thought you had and it goes down by this big significant number. And I said, you should sit with that for a bit and see how and noodle that and see how it feels, like that you're going to miss out on this more, and he'd already gained a lot, missing out on more, or like this wealth vanishing. He goes, I got it. He's like, I'm cool. I'm like, I'm glad you're really cool. So I knew what I wanted to do. Like, I always believe in taking profits off the table when you've got some. So I took profits, and he did not. And he has been riding the price down and down and down. Now it's going to go back. It will go back up again eventually, but he might have to wait a while for it. And he's like, Mom, you know, the money I lost, like the amount of money I lost, like that would have been a whole grad school.
Someone's
But
annual
that was
income in
his
Canada.
choice. It was his experience.
But, you know, and so he was really lamenting, like he was suffering with this lost money. First of all, I haven't lost any money, because you never actually had that money. And I said, but these are the life experiences that you need to carry forward. So clearly, but you don't actually know how you would have felt had you sold when it was way higher and you'd missed some huge upside. But now you know the pain of not having sold when you could have done and not taking profits along the way. So you need to kind of carry that forward. And I think it'll be a really good lesson, for him. But he's kicking himself. He's like, oh, the things I could have done. I'm like, well, these are...
But that will shape him. I think
think
that shaping him, it's such a safe time for them to experiment too.
And I keep saying too, like these are not mistakes, right? This is just learning. You're 20. I mean, you haven't lost. First of all, you haven't lost any money. You haven't lost any of the money you put in. But and you're 20, so you have tons of time to make it back up and where you were before. But I think you'll remember. I think you'll remember the decision you made. So him and I are always talking about stuff that I'm investing in, what I'm doing, and he loves it too. So
Pretty cool.
yeah.
And are any of your kids doing your course? Because we haven't talked about the course.
Yeah.
I think they live our course.
Yeah, exactly.
I think they've heard every aspect of every module that our
wait.
course has to offer. I'm sure they've heard us talk it
There's
'cause we
crypto.
live it.
Is there a crypto bonus in the
No,
course?
there's not a crypto bonus.
You're shooting it tomorrow?
No.
There's a crypto bonus. Yeah, but I think they've lived through every single terminology, every word, every module there is. They hear us talk every day.
So there's a course.
There's a course.
You don't put any of your kids through it? Your kids are still pretty young.
Well, some of our kids are older. Like how she's studying with. I think that they've kind of fast tracked it because, like they said, they lived it. So, like her son Aiden now, like would see her looking at properties or doing whatever. Like, what you doing, Mom? And she's like, oh, it's just my latest investment. And he's like, oh, like, and there's the terminologies that they just know through the osmosis.
That's a good idea.
You know?
I think we probably should make our kids take it.
Yeah,
no way
put them right through it.
Yeah.
Like I've done courses with one-eyed teenagers. You know, like I said, we were learning crypto together just to know he knew more about it than I have. And then I've also had, because he's going to be going into business and finance, and put him through real estate finance courses because we offer a lot of different courses, and I like even have some courses taught by MBA university professors that have, and he understands that component a lot more than me because he's the business math finance guy, and he's actually taking those courses at school, and he's into that, where we had to learn grassroots. So when I'm taking those courses, it kind of goes back to that whole obscure crypto, but our course is really, really like basic, and it teaches you those fundamentals. So then you know how to always be investing. And if you know the basics, then you know how to act and pivot in complex situations. You just see it so differently. It'd be like a designer coming into this room, and if a person has a design eye, they could probably maximize the space in this room working with all the exact same objects in the room and give a totally different perception of the room than we'd be able to. So it's not about knowing complex and confusing and fast information. It really is about knowing the basic fundamentals and the steps, and then how to apply those steps. And I think that's where our experience really comes in.
But I think that's a really great point, put our kids through it. So I have a 15-year-old. I think the course would actually be very valid for her because she can, I think, grasp the concepts, and their brain right now is just so absorbent. So now is a perfect time to kind of brainwash her into understanding the fundamentals, so that sometimes when you hear it from other people, so because I can sit there at the dinner table talking about the fundamentals till I'm blue in the face, and all she's hearing is wah 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 wah. But when she's in a course, and kids are now basically accustomed to learning online. Everything is basically a video that teaches you about something. So our course is right in there. It was ahead of its time. Who knew that people would want to do that kind of thing? So I don't see why not. I think I'll take you up on that idea.
Because I think they need, even though they're learning from leadership, they're still, I'm sure they're missing many small details that would only be, they can only be covered in a course. Like go from beginning to end. The course goes beginning to end.
Absolutely.
Yes,
So it's
yes.
like just from finding and identifying your market. I mean, that is hard for a lot of people. Like, where do I even start? So we can help you like come from out here and like zone in on a sub-market. So not just Hamilton, but what neighborhood in Hamilton, what few block radius are you going to focus on to getting the property and tenanting the property and maximizing cash flow and really just taking it from the beginning to end, so that you don't make some of the mistakes that we made early on in our career, so that you can move away from the challenging aspects and just focus on how to get the biggest sort of bang for your buck without any of the big hassles, right?
Yeah,
the big problem.
We teach you how to take the tenant and toilet issues out.
Yeah. So much that
and how to
Rachel's
keep the profits in.
likes buy, rent, hold now, sort of. More so than before.
Actually, fact, I got so much more confidence by just through osmosis being around Monika and Gillian, who preach this long-term buy and hold strategy that I've resisted all these years, that I finally went and bought my first buy, rent, hold property. That's a M.O.R.E. It's a fourplex. And I'm entering that world with a lot more clarity and a lot more confidence. And I actually can totally relate to the students that we have designed the course for, because I'm kind of on that side now.
I think the course talked you into it.
Possibly.
And you're supported, and now you have all those question marks.
Absolutely.
And you do see the value in the buy and hold.
Absolutely.
And it's seven modules, and they all are a real proven step-by-step system. So it's like making banana bread. You need all, like, the most delicious banana bread.
Good banana bread.
You need all the most essential ingredients and the right way to make this recipe. And that's what we really like to equate it by.
Banana bread.
A proven step-by-step system.
Because the mistake beginners make is like, I'll just make the banana bread myself.
Yeah.
I'm not going to follow a recipe.
Or I'll
I'm applying it to
do
real
that with
estate.
bacon.
No.
They would never do that with baking banana bread. They'd always follow a recipe. But
Yeah.
for some reason, real estate investors, golfers, was like, I'll figure it out myself.
Well,
They
watch
get the
some
wrong grip.
podcasts.
They get the wrong grip, and
Yeah.
then they make mistakes. And it's
And
really
they
hard to
don't-
change your grip after you got those
Or
habits.
people who really want to, but they just are paralyzed by these fears about, because real estate mistakes can be super costly, and I think people recognize that these aren't just a $200 investment. It's not a $60 gold coin. These are really, and as every year goes by, it gets more and more expensive, and the mistakes can be really expensive. And so that's why we're like, take advice from 3 women in real estate who have a system. We cover every angle. And just so that you just don't have to worry about making an error that you could easily have been avoided had you just had the tracks to follow. So like, we're the cart, we're the horse, hook your cart to us and let us kind of show you the way. Because there are proven tracks, and it's not that hard, but there are things that not everyone knows. So we kind of try to pull the curtain back so you can see where the problem areas can be, and so you avoid the common kind of pitfalls. So
Because hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah, just so you can be successful, make good cash flow, and then kind of sleep at night, so you're not paralyzed by fear that you're going to lose money, or that your tenants are going to wreck your place, or that you're going to go broke. It's like, it doesn't have to be hard.
And we've distilled it into 7 steps
Yeah.
to profitable rentals.
And it's at home, like it's online. And so we also, another consideration for these mothers and others, are busy schedules. You know, you don't have time. Who has more time? Like no one has time. When people tell me they're busy, I just think that's hysterical. Because I'm like, you're telling me how busy you are. Oh my, and then they like, you just don't understand. I'm like, oh, but I do. And any productive person's busy. We're all busy. And you never can be too busy to learn. I take courses all the time, constantly adding to my education. I don't care how busy I am, I'll make it work. And online learning is amazing because you can learn on demand. You can learn from your home. It would be great if they went through in the 6, and they even can get it completed in 6 weeks. And that would be absolutely awesome if you can really give it your all. Don't rush through it. Do it step by step. Give it your all and do a 1 a week. Then you're done in 6 weeks. You'd be ready to start investing. But some people don't have that. They might want to go faster. They might want to go slower. And that's okay. We respect that because we know that people have different schedules and they go at different paces.
And I think people can understand that if you're going to invest, you have to invest the time and your money, because like many of us are planning on holding some property for over 20 years. So why wouldn't you front learn some of that learning?
And the safety net of doing it through a course like ours, we have a money back guarantee. So there's virtually no risk to anyone that follows this learning process. If they don't make their money back on their first investment in the first year, we'll gladly refund their money. And to your point, investment in time and some money. There's obviously a cost to education. But one of the things that I always struggle with is that I want to continue to enhance my learning and my knowledge, because that's what stretching is. That's what pushing your boundaries is all about. And I was using that busy angle for a long time. And finally I realized, well, what can I do to create more time in my day? I started waking up at 5 a.m. Robin Sharma taught me about the 5 a.m. club. It's changed my life. Thanks to COVID, I expanded my day and I'm that much more productive, that much more profitable, and I have even more energy in the process.
Wait, what time are you going to bed?
She's a night owl.
Yeah, that part I haven't mastered yet. I don't go to bed at 9 o'clock. I'm not one of those people. I stay up till 11:30, 12 o'clock.
And you're still on the
I
vibe.
can't do that.
I can't do
And
that.
it doesn't always work out. Depends what I'm doing the night before. But 80% of the time, it works.
She's good energy. I'm usually up around 4:30, but I go to bed early.
I wake
Not
up at
too
7
early,
and I go to
but-
bed at 9. I'm like the opposite.
Yeah. And the point is everyone's different.
Everyone's
Yeah,
different.
and they should respect that difference.
You just
too.
have to find out
Like,
what works. But
Yeah,
you have
find
to,
out what
you
works
have
for
to
you.
try.
Try it all.
You have to try.
No different with your investments. You've all tried a lot of things.
Right.
And I can't believe how people are often about or. It's either you're with me or against me. You're either stocks or real estate. Like
A
know.
little bit of everything.
No, you
Yeah.
need to be aware of everything. I mean, Gillian passed on amazing advice a few weeks ago about the crypto, and she's like, Monika, it's like the way of the future. And I listened. I'm not saying I'm going to run out and invest in crypto, but it made me jump on the webinar. It made me learn more because she is right. You're surrounded by smart people. I know when you started doing your stocks and all this sort of stuff, I started listening. I didn't do the stocks, but I started to learn more, and now I'm learning to diversify. And I think it's important. There's no wrong or right.
Oh,
way to do
Monika, I
it.
will pull you over to the stock hacking side.
Yeah.
I would
Well,
love that.
yeah.
You know what? Because it's really great for the more liquid. It's much more liquid, and it's good for cash flow.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out what works. Because if you can't do
And
the
you
real
can
estate,
do it on the beach when you're in Costa Rica.
On the
You can-
phone.
I'm not doing it. Neil's doing it. I delegated. I outsourced to my husband.
Yeah, maybe Vaughn would be more interested. I find there's a
Vaughn
personality
is
that people
interested
want.
in learning that. Well, he also loves to learn all the different strategies and to implement, and then we can make good decisions. And we always get the training, and we invest in the training. We don't just go in. We either get our experts to do it for us, or we'd invest. But even then, that's been proven to be dangerous, because how do you know your experts are right? So we need to
keep
vet
looking. You keep
your
learning.
own things. You need to learn the basics.
Right. That's why I
If
bug
anyone was
Gillian
to
about cryptos.
come to any of
'Cause
us.
I've only read so many things, and I know Gillian's read way more
I
than
know,
I have.
Yeah.
but even still, I feel like, I feel like the 51-year-old woman brain. I feel like it's not the right crypto person. It's all 20. I'm just saying that as a persona in the crypto world, I'm like an old lady. It's all like 20-year-old young men.
Yeah, but
who's-
you're not bleeding the hype and like the
No,
rocket
no.
ships and.
No.
But they're in
Just
the
saying
all or
it's-
nothing mentality,
it's
and
just
you're in
interesting.
diversifying
Yeah, yeah.
mentality.
Anyway, I find it it's fascinating. Keeps me on my toes.
Historic times we live in. Where can people learn about the course? Where can they find it?
Mothersofrealestate.com.
You have an Instagram, Snapchat, anything?
Facebook. Well, we have Facebook.
Yeah,
We have Facebook,
Facebook.
mothersofrealestate.com, and on Facebook you can find us on Mothers of Real Estate. And our acronym is M.O.R.E. More.
E.
So- Did I mention I'm dyslexic?
Can people catch shows from your TV show on there?
Yes, they can.
Absolutely. Actually, that's on YouTube.
I want to watch the first episode. We should do that once.
That's
it's
one
over.
with
When
the
she's lying
Yeah,
down.
I want to see the line.
Gillian is loud. And I
That's
wonder
like-
if the
that's
camera
annoying.
I wonder if the camera angle actually shows me kind of flinching and Gillian channeling participate in conversation, lead the conversation, take us intro and outro out of commercials and deal with the producer in my ear.
Yeah.
Gillian is loud.
It's not easy,
Oh,
is
it's
it?
funny. It's not.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
But we have a good time.
That episode was
We have a
hilarious.
good
funny.
time.
Yeah, wait, let's have a look when
Look,
this is over.
I would much rather say
Lay
my
down
arms
on a
the
television
table
show,
and-
my own show.
Yeah,
That's
not
what I
on a
want.
TV show. I don't know.
Okay, mothersofrealestate.com. Is there a discount code for
There
listeners?
is for you
Absolutely.
and your listeners.
Our 17
Um,
listeners?
Yeah, so if they put in the I win in the coupon section, in the code discount section, we'll give them 50% off.
50% off, folks.
50% off.
IWIN.
Mhm.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. We're way over time.
Thank you for having
You
us.
have
This
to
is like
edit
a
us
three-parter. 3 mothers, 3
Yeah.
parts.
That'll be the
Great.
day.
Thanks, everyone.
'Cause we
Thanks
still
for
don't-
having us.
we missed the story about how you broke your ankle, but that'll be another time.
Oh my goodness. Yes. That's definitely a different show.
Okay, different show.
She does that
Hopefully
a
it's not
lot.
off limits. thank you all for doing this.
Thank
Thanks,
you
everyone.
so
Thanks
much.
for having us. Thanks for the golf today, by the way, too. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Glad
Thank you for
enjoyed it.
stretching our comfort zone.
Thanks for being cool about it.
We're the coolest chicks you'll ever meet. Aside from Jerry, sorry.
And the most modest.
Yeah, we're fun. We're fun.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks again.
Thank you.